Peter, always an honor connecting with you, man. Obviously, we've gotten to know each other pretty well over the past couple years, and I've always been inspired by what you guys are doing at JDS Sports. But for people who might not, be familiar with the company and what you guys are doing, can you kind of talk about the inception, the beginning stages, and how you all define the purpose and mission behind the company?
Yeah, first of all, thank you for having me. Honored to be here as well. Yeah, we started actually in reverse order. So JDS Sports, we were founded in 2018, but that was on the heels of an acquisition of Slam, the legacy basketball magazine that I grew up reading, like many people in the 90s. Slam was ahead of its time once upon a time. We call it was the basketball internet before the basketball internet existed, but then got left behind when digital came of age. And so we saw it as an amazing opportunity to reorient and revitalize a brand that always celebrated the game of basketball, but doing it in a more digital first way as a media property, but also as a lifestyle brand leaning into commerce. So in 2018, after we acquired Slam, we started partnering with early stage startups that were plugging into our growth plans. And naturally, those startups were raising money. So we zoomed out for a second and we saw an opportunity to create a hub and spoke strategy where we own and operate Slam, but then provide a competitive advantage to those startups that we can help beyond our check. And that's like using the power of Slam and its reach, but also plugging those brands and opportunities into events that we may be hosting and things like that. So that's how we got off the ground in 18.
Got you. I want to come back to that, but I want to talk about you guys being purpose driven because I think a lot of people talk about being purpose driven, but you guys actually live it and operate in it every single day. So can you guys kind of talk about like what that means when it comes to investing in companies and operating the firm from a high level?
Yeah, and just for context, for those that don't know, JDS Sports, we're set up more as a family office than a traditional venture fund. So we only have one LP, and that gives us the ability to do things in a unique way. So like I mentioned with Slam, we acquired and operate a business. We've incubated startups. We've done fund to fund investments, and we've invested in early stage startups like seed to Series A. Um, from 2018 to 2021, we started having a bunch of wins with that in that bull market backdrop. And we decided what we wanted to do with our profits, not only reinvest in new companies, but also put that money to work by having impact. So we launched a donor advised fund in late 2021. It's called Play with Purpose. And much like it sounds, the intent is to get behind nonprofits that are using sports for positive impact. And we really have three pillars that we like to call out. One is um, creating courts that inspire. So we partner with Project Backboard, where every year we look to do 10 public basketball court refurbishments around the country and even around the world at this point. The second one is creating pathways to perform. So providing access both to opportunities on and off the court. And that could be everything from USA Basketball's Women in the Game conference or Peace Players Friendship Games that brings people together from different cultures, different parts of the world, or even their Girls Summit. Third impact pillar is called Ball Connects All. And we know that basketball is a universal game and a universal language, if you will. And so we believe in the power for basketball to unite different cultures, different generations, different people from different socioeconomic backgrounds. It's near and dear to us. So to your question is we like to create this flywheel where our profits are put back to work to fuel purpose.
Got you. I love it. I love it. And going back to like the work that you're doing on, you mentioned Slam, that's like the pillar company for you guys, but you've invested, I want to say, in 30 plus companies across sports, culture, entertainment. When you look at the portfolio, like what type of opportunities really get you guys excited the most?
Yeah, we have three areas where we like to invest. Media is our bread and butter and our backbone. So we've invested in everything from Slam to the Gist Sports, which is basically women's sports through a women's voice, but also a women's lens. Front Office Sports was a recent company that exited. And so media is one, uh, tech, and that's broad, but we focus on three areas within tech. So ad tech like VidMob and Transmit Live, consumer technology, Status Pro, and even blockchain technology is an area of focus for us. And then third is more recent to us, which is wellness and like better for you CPG companies, Lemon Perfect and Slate Milk protein drink. So that's kind of where we invest. And the opportunities that we like are, again, maybe it's because I was a point guard. So we like to facilitate a lot of sort of introductions and create a lot of connectivity in and around our portfolio. Initially, the thought there was slam to that company, but now it's also A to B, company to company. And so if we can't be beyond our check, create a competitive advantage and provide additional value beyond that, then we'll tend not to invest. So it's anywhere that we see that we can provide an edge to that startup is where we like to lean in, and be as involved as much as possible.
How do you think about because like every firm or fund that looks to invest has their own basic criteria for what they're looking for within any given company. Is there any like outliers or things that you all um, think about or look for when you're looking to invest, whether that's just like a certain type of founder background or anything of that nature?
We like it to touch sports and lead with sports if that's where the company is finding its product market fit. But we also want the company to go beyond sports, and just have a much bigger addressable market. And so we look for founders that are bold and that see even bigger and beyond just sports. So that's like one criteria. The other sweet spot that we found just from like a stage perspective is, seed companies typically were a little bit too early, and then Series A might have been a little bit too far along for us. And so we would like to play in between that space when there's a bridge round to be the largest or second largest check in that bridge round. And so that's kind of like the position where we like to play the most. But for us, it's founders that love sports, that have connective tissue to sports, but that are also thinking of other use cases in and outside of the industry.
I want to go back to Slam for a minute because I grew up on Slam. Like I used to collect the magazines when I was young. Like every young hooper, dreamed to be on the cover of Slam one day. So I'm super interested on like how that opportunity came about. Like what was the structure of the deal? Like it's as high level as you can get. Like how did that whole kind of opportunity transpire?
Yes, Slam's prior ownership group was the Enthusiast Network, and it was a lot of outdoor enthusiast magazines that were tied to skiing and snowboarding or surfing. So Slam was just always a different audience than what they normally attracted. That was part one. But part two was they were going through an evolution as a parent company and looking to get more focus and into a different situation. And so Slam came up for sale initially in 2015, and we made a bid on it, and then we just hung around the hoop for a couple of years. I don't think they were really serious at the time and parting ways with it, but ultimately in 2017 we were able to consummate a deal. So it was a function of persistence, and to use a basketball analogy, we like to say hanging around the hoop,
Yeah.
building a rapport with the ownership group, but also gave us time to really set what the vision would be. If we were to get a deal done, what would it look like? And and also establishing a trust with the CEO and the founder of Slam at the time. So it gave us a great opportunity.
How do you guys think about balancing financial returns with social impact? Because obviously, social impact is a huge part of what you guys do, but also like any family office or fund, you want to return capital or bring in, more money than what you put out. So, how do you think about that balance? Are there any like trade-offs or synergies between the two that you can think of?
Our thesis is that profits and purpose are inherently connected, right? They're not mutually exclusive things. So you can argue that profits are the engine, and purpose is the jet fuel. And for me specifically, the impact work we do, like I love investing in companies. I love serving founders and nonprofit executive directors. It kind of is what fills my cup each and every day. But to do it in a way where we can also help our for-profit companies by having nonprofit initiatives, you wouldn't believe that it actually helps grow the bottom line. And I have a ton of examples just on the Slam brand partnership side. When we go to market with programs and opportunities, every time we present an integration that involves giving back and doing something good, it's not just that it's a good look, it's the right thing to do, but it's also, if you're going to be owning and operating a business that serves and operates in those communities, it benefits your company to establish trust, establish a relationship and goodwill, and to give back. And so we found it to be a huge win-win, not just because we believe in it's the right thing to do, but also it just helps the business, and it also helps with employee engagement. Like it's one of the easiest tools to help turn your employees into ambassadors for the company because they get behind opportunities that are personal and near and dear to them as well. So it's big for us, but you can't give away profits if there are no profits. So obviously business comes first, but it doesn't have to be one or the other.
hmm looking at your background, because you've worked with Nike and the Knicks, I believe you've done a number of different things in your past and before working with JDS Sports. So, and particularly around community building and fan engagement. So, since your days kind of working in that arena, what have you seen that has changed or evolved with how fans engage with media, teams, etc.?
It's crazy. A lot has changed. The platforms have changed, but the principles are the same, right? And I'm dating myself here, but I go back to the AOL CD days, right? When you used to plug that thing in I would dial from my landline in Brooklyn to Queens, and it was a long distance call, and then my mom would yell at me for the phone bill. But back then it was message boards, right? Before there was social media, it was message boards, and then it became social media, and then it became sort of you know chat boxes and different functions like that. But community is the same. It's about being your authentic self as a brand, right? And that's being consistent with your content and showing who you are and what you're about. So as much as the platforms have changed from when I was like coming of age in the industry with both the New York Knicks, and I was in the early days of Web 2.0. So like at the advent of Facebook and YouTube and Twitter, those were the tools that the teams, leagues, and brands were using at the time. Now it's obviously like TikTok, IG, and the like. So it's really just like the teams and the leagues and the brands that are themselves the most consistent, the most authentic to themselves, not trying to put on uh, an act, if you will, are the ones that usually win in that space. And that could be simple if you're a product company. So you mentioned Nike basketball, and I was on the agency side, working with Nike basketball as the client. And even then, it was always about super serving the consumer, right? And so they used to have a lot of technology that would tie your social profile to the consumer profile. So we would know what Malcolm has bought in the last 3 months, and how much you've engaged with us on any one of those social platforms. And it's just showing up and it's acknowledged. Sometimes it was a simple like button. It wouldn't have to be a comment or anything like that, or a DM just to respond to a consumer who had an issue with one of their products. So, yeah, frankly, as much as a lot has changed, really nothing has changed about community.
I agree. I agree. And you look at the athlete landscape, obviously social media has democratized access, how fans connect with their favorite athletes. Like what are your thoughts on the role athletes, influencers, creators will play in the next role of shaping media and fan connection?
Yeah, we're living in the creator economy, which is only growing, and it was, athletes and entertainers, but now it's just it could be fans that become voices and creators, and it's only growing. And the players that sort of outsource that function, that have someone else sort of showing up, are the ones I don't think win in the end. I think it's the players who actually put in the time that connect with their fans. Um, like KD is a great example, right? He's someone who's like, he's funny, he's got a sharp personality. He sometimes gets into it a little bit too much, and people say he kind of could avoid that, but he's himself. And I think in the end that goes a really long way with fans. And so I think we'll only see more of that. And because the athletes who are growing up today were digital first natives, they grew up with these tools. There's not an adjustment. They've lived with the technology their whole lives. It just
Yeah.
becomes easier, more seamless.
hmm And getting back to investing in sports and sports as an asset class, how do you kind of see that playing out, let's say over the next decade or so?
You're starting to see a lot of big paradigm shifts, right? The globalization of sports, right? NBA announcing its plans in Europe or its intentions to launch a league. So you have that. You have the globalization of the sports. You have all the changes happening in college sports, most recently with NIL, but also now the House versus the NCAA and actually paying of athletes. And so that's creating opportunities, challenges, but also opportunities, right? And so we always look for that. in one investments is like, where's the disruption happening and what's the opportunity and how do we play in that? And then that trickles down to youth sports. I mean, you've on vetted sports yourself. You've seen how many headlines of private equity funds are going into that space, and we talk about this right even right before this call. My colleague and I, like, the question is the why, and I think the theory and thesis behind youth sports is that most parents will do anything for their kid when it comes to youth sports, right? When that's like getting them the best gear, putting them on the best team, making sure that they're seen, making sure that they're getting developed. And so I wouldn't say that it's recession proof, but there's sort of a um, passion meets parents' willingness to do almost anything. And now private equity companies are trying to come in and sort of being, gobble up the owners and the
Yeah.
operators, the facilities, the technology now. So you're starting to see a lot of that. Those are like just three of the areas. And then obviously you have the professional teams and leagues being open to private equity deals. So to your point, it's becoming a standalone asset class. Already is.
Yeah, already is for sure, for sure. And then you mentioned technology and also consumer. I'm interested to hear how you guys at JDS Sports think about opportunities there. Like, is there any overarching um, themes or verticals within those areas that kind of pique your interest more than others?
On the consumer side, it's hard. Like apps, that's a really hard space because the cost of user acquisition can
Yeah,
be really, really high. So we have initially had two consumer plays on the beverage side. So Slate Milk was interesting. We kind of discovered those guys, Manny and Josh. They came off of Shark Tank. And funny enough, because they went on the show, they were in the pre-product stage, and Mark Cuban famously spit out the chocolate milk and say, "This is disgusting." So if you YouTube that, you'll see his reaction. But what we liked about those two guys, most founders probably go home, pack it in, pivot, go do something completely different after being like embarrassed on national television like that. But they went back to the lab, they refined the formula, built the brand brick by brick. I just loved how their resilience and it kind of gave them a chip on their shoulder to compete. And just the way they rolled out their strategy was really smart. But we started thinking about like, okay, how would we plug Slate and maybe the athletes that they're going to work with into our roadmap? So maybe it's at the Slam Draft Suite. We can have slates in the fridge. Our basketball camp's a 5-star basketball camp with the MBPA. Put in slates in the fridge there. Like, how do we expose this product into our orbit and our universe? So that was kind of on the consumer side of, all right, we believe in this as a standalone, but can we give it a little bump through our assets, through our sort of universe? And so that's kind of the thinking when we go into investments.
got you. Nice. Last couple questions before we wrap up here. For other people who's interested in sports as an asset class, wants to dip their toe into this arena, what advice would you give them on how to navigate this space and find opportunities and analyze opportunities?
Yeah, it's no different than any other industry from the standpoint of you have to know what your natural gifts are, and you have to also know where is the opportunity in the market and where those two things then meet, right? And so, in sports, just like any highly competitive industry, you're going to need a warm introduction to get kind of seen. That's one. Two is like interns usually get converted into full-time roles, so I think that's also of huge importance. But at the end of the day, everyone there has passion. That's sort of like table stakes in a given. Like, everyone wants to work in sports. But the two things are what's the skill set that would set you apart? So you have to go beyond the resume. And that could be a reel, a portfolio, a project, an event, a product, something that's unique that stands out beyond an 8.5 by 11 PDF. I think everyone has one of those too. But then second is when you're applying for these roles within this space, you're doing one of two things, generally speaking. You're solving a problem and
Yeah.
taking someone's like headaches off of their plate, or you're seizing an opportunity that company sees that there's no one in the seat yet that can help them with that. And so thinking through that as you're looking for roles and how you're suited and your skills shape up to that, I think is really important. And then obviously getting walked in the door by the right people, a trusted voice, a trusted relationship that can introduce and vouch for you. I think those are the key pieces.
Great advice. Peter, man, this has been great. Lastly, can you let people know where they can learn more about you and also what you guys are doing at JDS Sports?
Yeah, jdssports.co. You can see our full portfolio. And like you mentioned, how we connect profits and purpose through Play with Purpose, our donor advised fund. I'm on LinkedIn, Peter Robert Casey, or Twitter, call me PRC with underscores in between.
My man, appreciate your time, brother.
Likewise.